After Booker makes his way to Elizabeth, so now we're finally at the point where Booker finds Elizabeth. Booker produces a key with a bird on one side and a cage on the other. The key is used to open the heavy-duty bank vault door that's shown in the background. The important takeaway here is that just like the coin with heads or tails on either side, we have a key, or one object which appears to represent two completely opposite concepts: the bird, the cage. The bird symbolizing freedom, and of course the cage symbolizing slavery. However, both symbols appear on the very same key, which is hinting at the fact that either choice ultimately leads to the same outcome. So this is a very common theme in Bioshock, and this is something that's in the first game, where the overall idea is choice is an illusion, but you're given a choice anyway. I'm going to go into that a little bit later in the series. We'll go into that in more detail, and I'm going to explain how this paradox works and why it's so important. And now a little later on the boardwalk of Battleship Bay, Rosalind and Robert appear with two pendants bearing the cage and the bird. Just like the original Bioshock, where Levine introduces the illusion of choice, we find ourselves in the very same situation. The choice of pendant only really factors in at the end of the story as a visual cue. However, once again, the player is being played, as it were, just like the original Bioshock. One significant thing worth pointing out, however, is that Elizabeth asks Booker to choose for her. So you have to ask, why doesn't Elizabeth choose for herself? Maybe it's because she already understands that the choice doesn't really matter, which would make perfect sense since we know that Ken Levine has already pulled this trick on us at least once before. So in terms of the overall outcome of the story, choice does not matter. That's right. Choice does not matter. This message was first presented to us with the use of the number 122 and the coin flip, not to mention that Rosalind and Robert Ludus are actually stand-ins for the fateful duo Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. And yet, paradoxically, choice does matter in one specific sense, and it's a very important sense. Namely, choice matters on an individual and emotional level. The genius of Bioshock Infinite shines once again as we realize that despite our lack of choice in the grand scheme of things, in the grand scheme of the universe, having the ability, having the wherewithal to choose, even if it's an illusion on a grand scale, still carries great value for us as individuals. So long as the choices we make matter to us and matter to others, it doesn't really matter what the end result is, other than we experience an emotional connection resulting in the choices that we make. This is a very important distinction, and this message comes through in Bioshock Infinite. I can't, if you take anything away, if you're just curious about what the main message of Bioshock Infinite is, it's this, right? It's the idea that choice in the overall grand scheme of things doesn't really matter. We don't have choice. We don't really have it's arbitrary. Our choices are arbitrary at best, okay, in an objective universal sense. But in a subjective sense, and this is the paradox that we're returning to again of Bioshock, the paradox of our reality is, in a subjective sense, our choices, we must have a choice, and they must matter to us, and they must result in, or at least they should result in, a connection that we can feel emotionally, and feel a connection to ourselves and feel a connection with others. That is the paradox. That is the teaching of Bioshock Infinite in a nutshell. But don't worry, this presentation is far from over. So the choice we make for ourselves at every minute of the day is between two different things. We're making a choice between liberation and slavery. And we're being shown this right here. We have liberation on the right and slavery on the left with the cage. So we have the bird and the cage. We're being shown this. And it couldn't be more clear. In other words, we choose at every moment in our lives whether we are willing to let go or if we're just going to keep holding on. A choice between, which is basically a choice between love and fear, right? This is probably the best way I can express this is choosing, and at every moment of your life, you're choosing, no matter what choice you make, however insignificant it may seem, it really is a choice between love and fear, or of liberation or slavery, right? This is the message of Bioshock. So the bird obviously represents freedom. To love is to allow oneself and others to be free. Love is acceptance without holding on to any conditions, right? That's the distinction. The cage represents control. When we control, it means we are fearful of losing control. We may want things to stay the same forever, even when we consciously know this isn't how the world works at all anyway. Perhaps Elizabeth is asking her father to choose for her because she has let go and is choosing love, right? Did you consider that about Elizabeth? She accepts whichever choice Booker makes out of love. Now, coming back to this symbol that we found in the Order of the Raven a little earlier, we can see this police station bears the same emblem. This is hinting at the association, of course, between law enforcement and the secretive order of the Freemasons, for example, which is a rather well-known relationship in our world. In today's political climate, this notion of the police maintaining a secretive, racist fraternity seems to be coming up a lot lately in our world. Historically, the role of the police in society has a rather duplicitous nature. It's also a completely thankless job, completely. Well, not to everyone, but it's probably the most difficult job. Might be one of the most difficult jobs on the planet besides trying to be president or something like that. On one hand, police are sworn to protect the community, which is often cited as a primary reason why police do the job in the first place. On the other hand, as law enforcement officers, they are sworn to uphold the laws, even if those laws are unjust, right? The law is the law. Not all law enforcement officers choose to uphold unjust laws, however. But unfortunately, those who reject the unjust laws are removed from their role as police officers by the institution at large. Now, moving on to the Hall of Heroes, we find a memorial to Lady Comstock. And the side of the room facing forward is illuminated by the sun, while the wall behind the monument has an image of the moon. So the age-old archetypal forms are everywhere in video games these days, and it's always nice to point these out when they appear. Now, I'm going to go a little bit in depth here, just a little, and point out that the reason Lady Comstock is holding the child towards the sun. The sun actually not only is the masculine, of course, but the sun's actually representative of the future. Okay. And the moon behind Lady Comstock is representing the past. So we have this element of time as well, because obviously the child is the future of Columbia, and the sun and the light of the sun is the future. And the moon, of course, moonlight is a post facto light source, or it's after the fact. So the light of the sun reflects off of the moon. So you're getting, when you're seeing moonlight, you're actually seeing secondhand sunlight, or you're seeing the past. And with the sun, you're seeing the future. So that is a little example of some of the deep significance of the sun-moon symbolism that we're seeing here in the Hall of Heroes. And here we have Comstock's Vengeance Monument in the Hall of Heroes, which commemorates the murder of Lady Comstock at the hands of Daisy Fitzroy. Notice that Comstock is bathed in the light of the moon. This unconscious cue indicates that Comstock's bloodshed has the blessing of the Holy Spirit, or the divine feminine energy. Only, of course, Daisy Fitzroy was, of course, framed for the murder of Comstock. History is only written by the winners, after all.